Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. On November the 6th, Massachusetts voters will cast ballots on question 2. A yes vote would mean to legalize physician-assisted suicide. The Archdiocese of Boston is part of a broad-based coalition of medical organizations, disability advocates, and other religious groups who are trying to stop assisted suicide. Together, they have joined to encourage a no vote on question 2 through television advertising and grassroots educational efforts. This ballot question represents perhaps the gravest threat to the dignity of life in the Commonwealth in recent memory. The proponents of this question view Massachusetts as a gateway for the rest of the country. If this becomes a reality here in Massachusetts, it will only serve to advance the culture of death, to promote suicide, and to further the secularization of our culture. Over 20 states have already been able to defeat this kind of legislation. But we know the challenge here in Massachusetts is very great because the culture is very secular and politically it is very liberal. We face many challenges in a campaign like this, which is why I'm asking for your help and leadership between now and November the 6th. The first challenge is that the proponents of the bill have framed the language that the voters will see. They deliberately avoid the word suicide, of course. Voters will be asked to support death with dignity. Who wouldn't want a dignified death? Unfortunately, this is really a euphemism meant to mask the reality. Doctors providing a prescription for someone with a terminal diagnosis of 6 months or less to end his own life. It's important that we, all of us, help people to understand what question 2 is all about. The second challenge is that we have only 50 days before the election. The vast majority of Massachusetts voters have still not heard about this issue. Generally, that favors those advocating a yes vote. It's important that every Catholic in the state hear about this issue over the next 6 weeks, and we need your help to be able to do that. Without the very active participation of Catholic parishes and schools in this educational effort, it will be extremely difficult to prevail. I know that September and October are very busy months for you as they are for me, and that there's a lot that is being asked of you. But this issue is most critical. If physician-assisted suicide passes here in Massachusetts, it will be extremely difficult to stop it. This is our best chance. We need your help to stop assisted suicide. Let me speak for a moment about the reluctance we all feel about speaking about so-called political issues. We know that whenever we speak on these issues, someone in our congregation will tell us that they're not happy about that. Some will think that it violates a false understanding of the separation of church and state. Our parishioners have been hearing from secularists and atheist groups for decades that the church shouldn't speak out on these issues as a way to bully and intimidate us so that our voices and perspectives aren't part of the public discussion. Thankfully, we have a public square in the United States that encourages and allows the free exchange of ideas, and our perspective must be heard from the pulpit, in our bulletins, in our prayers and by our people sharing our perspective whenever they encounter others. On moral issues like this, literally an issue of life and death, we need to advance our vision of the common good. This is just part of our prophetic role that comes to us in our baptism, our confirmation, and our ordinations. Generally, there are three categories of reasons why people oppose Proposition 2. First, there are groups like us that see that physician-assisted suicide is simply a terrible idea based on the value of human life, the values of the medical profession, and the legitimate fears of those in the disability community. These groups believe there are better and more compassionate ways to care for those at the end of life, such as hospice, palliative care, and the loving support of family members and community. They need support and affirmation in their position. Secondly, there are those who aren't strongly opposed to the concept of physician-assisted suicide, but who oppose it because of significant and dangerous flaws in question 2. The key flaws being that doctors agree that terminal diagnosis of 6 months or less are often wrong. Many with terminal diagnosis live years longer. Secondly, patients requesting suicide do not need, according to this legislation, to be examined by a psychiatrist or a psychologist before receiving a prescription to commit suicide. And we all realize that many terminally ill patients suffer from depression. Studies indicate that 50% of those diagnosed with cancer are actually clinically depressed. Question 2 does not require a consultation with a palliative care or a hospice expert. No doctor is present when the patient takes the lethal prescription. This is not a dignified way to die. There is no requirement in this legislation that the patient notify family members. The compassionate care at the end of life should involve the loving support of family members and the community. We should be supporting improved hospice and palliative care statewide, not legalizing suicide. The third category of opponents are those who think that an issue like this should never be decided by a ballot question, but instead by the legislature. They believe that a complicated issue like assisted suicide should not be decided on the basis of appealing euphemisms like death with dignity or 30-second commercials in the final weeks before an election. They too are persuaded of the flaws. It's important that our people hear all three categories of arguments. As we get closer to November the 6th, it becomes more imperative that we talk about the flaws in the bill. Even those that might generally be in favor of physician-assisted suicide will recognize those flaws. We need those people to join us in a no vote on question 2.